channel. We are Duke's Garage. We are talking tools and into fixing cars. Make sure that you subscribe, cause all the stars you'll see. If you've got a project, this is where you want to be. Duke's Garage. Welcome to Duke's Garage. Yeah, we're talking cars.
Welcome back to Duke's Garage, and in part 3 of this video series we are going to continue with the completion of the timing chain job on this 2004 Cadillac CTS. So in part 1 we removed the timing chain cover. In part 2 we removed the old timing chain and installed the new timing chain, and now in part 3 we'll continue with the reinstallation of all the parts and get this thing fired up and see what we got. Here we have our cover cleaned up with that oven cleaner I've been raving about. I'm going to remove the water pump and make way for the new water pump, but also we want to clean the matting surfaces on the back side of this. So got a lot of the gunk off of it. It's looking a lot better. I might go over it a bit more with the Scotch pad just to get rid of some of the spots I missed. Get it nice and clean, but make sure you at least at the very minimum clean the matting surfaces and get it ready for reinstallation. Alright, here's the cover plate all cleaned up. I just did a little extra cleaning using the Super Clean. This stuff is fantastic for breaking up grease. Some toothbrushes and some softer, the brass bristle brushes. You're also going to want to use a pick, maybe a couple different picks. You want to get into these grooves here. You want to get into these grooves here. They're probably full of sealant from the original application. You want to go through and pick out all the sealant all the way around everything. Then there's a water pump seal that actually lives right in here. That was tricky to get out of there as well. So you really had to pull on it to get it out of there. At least on my car I did. But once you have it all cleaned out, you can hit it with some compressed air on it just to clear it out. Maybe even chase it with some carb cleaner, because that likes to dry up water as well. We want to get all the water out of there. And then I went over all the matting surfaces as well with a piece of Scotch-Brite. So now on this side here, just was more cosmetic. You technically I guess could leave it greasy if you wanted to, but I just figured I like to clean up parts before I put them back in. But I went over all the surfaces here where things mat up. Now we're gonna pull the knock out this crankshaft seal, and we also have some seals here for the I think those are for, is that for variable valve timing? Yeah, I think it might be a seal for the variable valve timing there. So we have a kit. Let me show it to you. Alright, so we have a kit here. This is for the cover. I'm using the Fel Pro one. This is the number for the CTS, first gen CTS, TCS 46108. So it comes with a bunch of parts here. Basically a lot of gaskets here. Let me show you. Okay, so here are the contents of this kit, and a couple of little extra things here. It comes with, this is for the water pump. This is one of the water pump ones. This is on the cover. This would actually be for the water pump when it goes in. This is crankshaft seal. These are for the variable valve timing oil sensors. Okay. Then it comes with a tube of this RTV black, which is for the along the mating surfaces of the cover. Now the timing chain kit came with this from M+. It's a gray, and it's a high temp RTV silicone gasket maker, professional use, high grade. I'm kind of inclined to try this this gray out because it kind of matches what was on the car, which was a gray. And also this kit has these gaskets. These gaskets here go to the back of the tensioners. So Not quite certain why they included these tensioner gaskets. The list of contents for this kit is kind of cryptic. There's a few items that I don't see in this. I guess they're going to be, yeah, I guess there's going to be these. How many there got? 3? Yeah, okay, so there were 3 items I couldn't figure out, and I guess it's these tensioner gaskets. So for certain we're going to use this. I'm going to opt to, instead of using the RTV black, I'm going to use this from the timing chain kit. I'm going to use this for the VVT sensors. Then there's these O-rings. I got to remember where the heck they came from. We'll have to figure this one out as well. Okay, a couple little notes about the gaskets here. So you'll notice on this guy, there's a little notch at the top. That notch corresponds to a notch here. So make sure you're plugging in that notch. And we push those into the groove. Get that all seated nice. And then on the other side, let's flip it over. Alright, on the other side with the crank seal, I just use a section of wood here and just hit it square on and drive it right into place. There obviously are seal installers that you can use. If you have a socket that fits right around the outer edge here, you can put a socket on there, but I've been finding that just a little piece of wood, smack it in there, it's fine. On these sensor seals, some are more obvious. Here's the old seal. So the side that's just totally flat is the side that's out. Then the side with the groove would be the side that's in. This one here has grooves on both sides, but to me, this side here seems like the side that would go on the inside, and this would be the side that would be on the outside. So make sure you put them in the correct way so you get a good seal. And with these as well, I would just give them a nice little whack with a flat hammer and knock them right in. Alright, we have our seals all in place. We just use a little flat of wood, as I mentioned before, hit it right down the center. Over here, it kind of helped to turn it on its end and just move it around different positions and tap it so you can fit into these little sections here, these little tight sections, and got them all sealed. I'm going to wait to put the water pump on until I put the cover back on the vehicle, and then we'll go ahead and once we have it all tightened down, we can go ahead and then put our water pump in place. Another word on this valve cover. This is the valve cover from the United States, the US passenger side, or the right side of the motor. The one that really, I think, has a lot to do with the problems that happen with these timing chains and sludge buildup, which affects the chains stretch, and all hell breaks loose. But as we discussed earlier, I'm gonna move this over to some grass. Got some water in here still. I'm cleaning this thing up. You have this little breather tube, little 1/16 of an inch hole here, which corresponds to the other side here. Now this has actually been cleaned out. I showed you earlier. I'm gonna give you a side by side of these two items. So kind of hard for it to. There we go. So you can see now. You can see the little holes. They're on the bottom side of that breather tube. You could not see these whatsoever when I pulled the valve cover off. Totally sludged over, and I believe at that point the valve cover, it's not getting any air in there. It's not breathing. And that's conducive situation for sludge buildup. Still see some here on the kind of get this thing in some good light on the end of these valve covers. Big layers of sludge in this thing, much worse than the driver's side, the left side. So you definitely want to clean that up real good. Clean this valve cover up real good. You don't want to put it back on there dirty and then find yourself having a bad chain within a short amount of time. So the other thing is, make sure you're changing your oil frequently. You're using that Mobil 1 5W30 or a higher grade of oil, and changing it along with the manufacturer
recommended interval, which I think is around 10,000 miles. I'll have to double check that. So you don't want to put cheap oil in it. You don't want to skip oil change. And I would dare say that, you know, my intention is, this is my son's car, I think at least every couple oil changes, maybe every 2-3 oil changes, I might pull this freaking valve cover off and look at it, because I'd much rather spend the money for an upper intake gasket and some valve cover gaskets than the money and the time and the stress of doing a timing chain job on this car. You know, just keep an eye on this thing, because yeah, it's just a kind of a design flaw. I wonder if there's a kit or something I can get to replace this thing and give me a little bit more breathing on the side. I don't want to throw off the emissions, but yeah. So I just want to give you a real good warning on that, and take a real hard look at yours. I'm betting that if you have a bum chain, you go inside of this cover, you're going to find this thing totally sludged out. Alright, so here's the valve cover, all cleaned up, looking good. Got that little guy in there all cleaned up nice. So I took a lot of elbow grease, a lot of degreaser, Scotch-Brite pad, toothbrush, just to get all the gunk out of that valve cover. I fixed this little piece of tubing here, and I'm going to take this air, put her in here, and we're going to blow this thing out and just see if anything comes out the other side. Alright, looks good. I'll just zoom in here and see the holes are really clear now. And I'm going to hit it one more time. See the kickback on the camera from the air coming through. It's flowing nice. I don't see any junk coming out. So I think we should be good to go. Now it's time to put the cover back on the motor. Long time waiting to do this. I'm so excited to actually get this thing back on the motor and get towards reassembly and starting the vehicle. I used a gray silicone that came with my timing chain, the timing chain kit. So just ran a nice bead. It's probably a little too thick, honestly. Should be like in that 1/16 to maybe a quarter. I'm looking more like a 1/2 inch. So it was a little tricky to get it to flow out, but I'm hoping it won't create any issues. There'll definitely be a little overlap. It'll spill over some, but it should be fine. So it has to sit for 15 minutes to flash over, and once the 15 minutes of flash time takes place, we can go ahead and install it on the vehicle. There's a new gasket here around the water pump area. Put that in. So don't forget to replace that. Any possible dust and debris. I see some stuff here. Get out there. Now we got that cleared out. Pull the cardboard out the way. Bought this little spray bottle. I filled it up with some clean oil. And all I want to do is just go over all these chains and these tensioners real good with some oil. Some good fresh oil. I'm going to have to re-wipe down my matting surface because I forgot to do this. Take some carb cleaner. Go back over the matting surface and make sure we didn't get any oil. I'm gonna go for the hole here.
I'd like to pause the video right here to let you know there is available some guide pins that make the installation of the timing chain cover much easier. I did not have them whenever I did this. Obviously you can get through it without them, and work your there is a little bit of fumbling around that you might have just trying to get everything perfectly lined up. These pins screw right into the face of the block and correspond to holes on the timing chain cover, and it allows you to perfectly slide it right into place without any, fumbling around or what have you. I was trying my best to find you a picture of these pins and put that down in the description as well if you want to use them. I actually would recommend them unless you're really comfortable with the process. If it's your first time doing it, they're not expensive. They're just you probably could even use a couple bolts. Cut the heads off and screw them in, and then use those to slide them in. But I'll do my best to try to track them down. I looked at them a long while back when I did this job, and have not been able to relocate them, but they are available. There we go. Bolting away. There we go. We have all the bolts started, and I just want to point out a couple things. One is all the bolts around the outside edge here, all the way around, except for right here. This is on the driver's side, US driver's side, or the left side of the car. There's a big guy that's up here by the top corner. Then there's another one, but they're all these. You'll notice this little grommet. With my case, when I pulled it off, most of these little grommets stayed in the hole. They were fine, but this is one in particular that came out with the bolt. You're going to keep track of that because you want to put those grommets back. So all the rest of them, the black grommet stayed in the hole, so that was good there. Around the water pump, you have some longer bolts, some longer guys here. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 bolts. Usually longer guys going here. I think these here are basically the same size as the outside bolts. Yeah, there's 3 here. Then there's a couple big ones. There's a big guy here on the left side as well. And there's one big guy there. I think that's the only other big one. Yeah, there's one big guy here and one big guy there. So it's actually not too bad keeping up with the bolts. Everything's cool now. So I'm going to go ahead and just snug them down, and then we're going to come back and torque them. Up next is the water pump. So we're going to go ahead and drop this in. We got a really nice gasket that came with the valve cover, the timing cover kit from Felpro, which is a nicer gasket than the one that came with the pump itself. Has a nice little liner here, a little extra seam here on it. So we're gonna go ahead and use this one and just tighten them up. Let's get these valve covers back on. I went around the matting surface with a Scotch-Brite pad all the way around and cleaned it up real nice. I just want to get these back in place to prevent the possibility of anything falling in there. And it'll make it easier once I have the covers on to put in the variable valve timing sensors, because I can then lay this wiring harness back on top of the valve cover. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out, put those on. We have a new gasket in place. As you can see, we also put in new spark plug seals. Notice the orientation of the spark plug seal. So this side goes up towards the top side of the valve cover. So a new one is very easy to put back in place or put in place. You just push it down by hand, it slides right in there. The old one's going to be really hard to get out because typically over time they're going to harden and really get locked in. So if you take like a screwdriver, take your screwdriver and get down in that groove there and try to get towards the edge where the metal of the outer metal ring is for these. What you're trying to do is just get in there and then just hit it, give it a good tap with a hammer. Maybe in a few places it'll pop out. Some can be more stubborn than others, but definitely replace those if you can. So we're all set. We're going to lay this in place. On the valve covers, we're going to go ahead and tighten down the bolts. 89 inch-pounds is what I'm reading in the shop manual. One thing I'll show you is the bolt
I went ahead, these are new grommets here, new grommet. I went ahead and slid the grommet up onto the bolt. I mean, you could have them rest down here and then just screw it down, and you know, I think that the grommet would make its way up to the top, but I went ahead and pulled them up just to make 100% sure that they're going to be seated properly. So I started all of them by hand, which you should always do, and then we're going to go around and tighten them down. Now, I looked in the factory manual. It didn't mention anything about a torque sequence, but just using good practice, let's start in the middle and go across, you know, work our way out, you know what I'm saying? Crosshatch, working our way to the outer bolts and get them all snug, and then we'll go back, crosshatch from the middle out and torque them down. So you can start here, there, there, you know what I'm saying? And work your way around and snug them all down. So let's get that done now. The crankshaft pulley is all installed now. We used an excellent tool picked up from Harbor Freight. I think I've said before, I have no relationship with Harbor Freight. I'm not a paid person who touts their stuff. I just, you know, I'm calling it like I see it. So this is a $90 tool here. It's a harmonic balancer installer and remover, or remover and installer. Worked excellent. I'm a bit of a tool junkie, and what I like about this is that it has, you know, so many attachments. You can use it for multiple applications, and I tend to work on lots of cars, a lot of variety of cars, so it's nice to have all these things in one kit. The thing worked absolutely perfectly. So, and also don't forget, with the 20% off coupon that Harbor Freight offers, it knocks it down to about 70 bucks. What's really cool about this kit is it comes with all these attachments here, especially the different size threads for your crankshaft or harmonic balancer bolts. In the case of the 04 CTS and these first gen CTSs, you're going to use the M14 1.5 thread pitch tool. So you screw this guy down into the crankshaft, then you bring the tool in place, and I used a 1/16 wrench. I don't know what that equates to in millimeters on the bolt here. Cranked it right down, and it pushed it right into place, nice and easy. Now I know some guys will try to use their bolt, the crankshaft bolt, to drive the harmonic balancer back into place. You do run a risk of stripping out your threads inside of your crankshaft, which would create a real bad situation if you do that. So don't recommend it. There are some videos out there of people who've made homemade devices where they'll take a bolt, a long bolt, the correct thread size and pitch, and then add a bolt to it and crank it down with some washers. You can find those out on eBay, but for 70 bucks, you know, after the coupon, this is a real nice kit, and it pretty much will take care of anything out there from what I can see. So the balancer's all installed now. We're going to go ahead and install the bolt, 74 foot-pounds, and then the shop manual says we want to give it an extra 150-degree turn after you set the 74 foot-pounds, which is just a little under a half turn, right? So let's go ahead and put this bolt back. I'm going to add some blue thread locker that I picked up on the tip of the bolt, just to kind of make sure we don't have any vibration issues with it backing off. To help with torquing down the crankshaft bolt, I put a screwdriver in here. I'm sure there's probably a flywheel locking tool. Instead of a screwdriver in here, and kind of just grab the other side. There's inside of the on the crankshaft, there's a little bit of a bump out. I just grabbed it some, and I was able to torque down. The bolt, and now I'm getting ready to give the half turn. But I'll just show you here. Got her off, held it. And then that kept the motor from spinning. Now we can take the breaker bar and just give it another half turn. That's good. Now that the left side valve cover is tightened up, is a good time to grab this little harness. There's some little studs here. You want to put them back on top of those studs there. See it? They lock right on in. There's two of them. So put that back in place and you'll be good with your wiring harness on this side. This is the easy side. And we'll lock those in and keep moving. Alright. Let's put our wiring harness in place. So this guy just sits up inside of these little, there's a little holder here. It'll sit right on top of it, and down here you'll see a little tab that locks it in. So this is all situated. Now we can go ahead and plug in our camshaft sensors. I have some seals that I'm going to put on, and I'm going to clean those sensors up too. I'll show you. Earlier on I had some seals. I didn't know what they belonged to. I probably put the correct application on the screen whenever I was trying to figure this out. But these are for your camshaft sensors. So this guy here, I just kind of just gave it a clean. You can see compared to one of its neighbors, it's pretty worked over right now. Hopefully these things still got some life in them. I may have to replace them, but cleaned them up. Just used a clean Scotch-Brite pad. I also use a little electrical cleaner. Tends to be a little less aggressive than the carburetor cleaner. So anytime I'm dealing with anything that might have some electrical, I usually tend to use electrical cleaner. But these seals actually sit right in here. So take a pick, pop them off, and then replace the seal with one of the new ones. This came with the timing cover kit from Felpro. Alright, as we put these sensors back in place, take a look at those wiring harnesses. I mentioned some earlier. This guy here is pretty much past it. So it's a good idea to just go ahead and get rid of that old dry rotted stuff. You may also find some of your connectors here may have broken tabs on them. I'm actually, like this one here is broken. There's nothing holding this thing on. It doesn't lock anymore. So good idea is to replace these and get them to lock in place. You don't want them bouncing around while you're driving down the road. So I found a lot of these connectors are getting a little dry rotted and brittle, so it's a good time to replace them. So get some, wire, some new wire loom here, covering, and swap that stuff out. There's a pretty nice list of might as wells as you go along this job. Things you might as well do. One of them will be putting a new set of plugs in it. It's a great time to do it. You have the upper intake off. You have to take that out off the motor to make room to get to your plug. So another might as well. One more I want to mention while I'm sitting here looking at it. Back here is the thermostat. It's really in a awkward place. Let me see if I can clear some space. You can see where it's at. It's the back of the motor. There we go. Back of the motor here. The thermostat lives back there. That's another might as well job. It looks like it's held on by about 2 or 3 bolts. And that's another job where you'd have to pull off the upper intake and get it out the way to get down to that thermostat housing. So if you have the desire, I might say go ahead and swap that out while you're in here as well. Alright, next up we're going to put on this alternator bracket and then the alternator. So we have our bracket here, and this front piece here is going to be for a pulley, a tensioner. Now just remember which way this thing goes. I believe we are going remember what I said about taking photos. It was really helpful. That picture helped me remember how this thing went together. So there's a bolt hole here, there, and there's gonna be one around the back side here. But that helped me remember the orientation of this thing. That was really getting to be frustrating, but I went and remembered I took the photo, and the photo really helped me out a lot. So now I can go ahead and bolt this thing in and finish up what I'm doing here. I picked up another tool today. This digital inspection camera, another Harbor Freight item, and the reason being is that I was nervous about the possibility of dropping something down in the cylinder, changing the spark plugs, as you know, and thought I might have dropped something down in there, and I was really concerned. And obviously, if I had done it and didn't realize it, leaving something down the cylinder can end up being a catastrophic engine failure issue. So this little baby, very affordable. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not, but it was $74.99, and then you know you can get that 20% off with the coupon, and it came in at $59.99, so 60 bucks. There we go. So we can get it somewhere you can kind of see it. Yeah, got some shade in there, but anyway, 60 bucks for this camera, and I gotta say I'm very impressed with it. They have two versions. One is a 2.4 inch, which is what this is. This is the 2.4 inch version, 2.4 inch screen. Then they have a 3.5. So the 2.4, as you know, I just got it for 60 bucks on sale. And the 3.5, which has a higher res screen, goes for 170. So pretty big jump in price. This camera, the accessories and all are pretty much the same. The setup's pretty much the same. I just think that the screen's a bit bigger and a little higher res, but it comes with an audio out, so you can hook it into a television. You get it on a bigger screen. It has some magnetic pickup tools and some picks you can put on the end of the camera if you're trying to find something. But yeah, I just dropped it down in the cylinder here. Let me show you. As you hit this button here, we just gotta hold it down. There you go. Now it's on. So I'm gonna just drop it down into the hole here. See if you guys can kind of see what's going on. Let me zoom you in. So, oh, what's also nice is it has a little light on the end of the probe. So, let's see here. I don't know if it's really coming on the camera clear, but it looks great on the screen here. So here, let me see if I can position this thing. All right, so you can kind of see the hole there for the spark plug. Now I'm gonna try to go down in that hole. I think I might have had some dirt on there. Let's try this one more time. There we go. You can really see it now. So, what's really cool about this thing is you can hit this button here and change the positions of the camera. And I don't think it's really showing up good on the screen here. I do apologize, but man, it's really clear. I mean, it's damn good. And you can rotate the camera. You can decrease the light intensity, increase the light intensity. You know, so it's just a really great buy. I gotta say, it's been very, very, very helpful. So now I have confidence. There's nothing down in the cylinder, so I can go ahead and put my spark plug in. Time to torque down the spark plugs. That's 15 foot-pounds or 180 inch-pounds. Alright, now we'll put the spark plug, the ignition coil, the ignition coils back. Drop them down, tighten up the bolts. Forgive me for jumping ahead. I want to keep things moving along. This is a very long video, as you can tell by now. So I just want to kind of keep it moving so we can tie it up, and hopefully we won't skip anything important. But I just want to show you where we're at. As I mentioned before, got the harmonic balancer on. I've installed the pulley on the new water pump. It's just 4 bolts. Snug them down. Got one of the tensioners on this side of the motor in there. Just got to tighten down the bolt. Put the idler pulley back in place. Also the alternator. I showed you I had the bracket in place. Now I slipped the alternator in. A little tricky. Really be careful of this. This is your ABS module. Slide it in past that. Try not to bang up these lines or bend them in any kind of way. You don't want to damage this. But yeah, slide it right in. You got a bolt on the top, 2 on the bottom, and one of these ratcheting boxing wrenches is real helpful with this top bolt especially. But just be careful of this heat shield that's on the side of the alternator. You can get it caught up in there. So, but this can help speed it along if you use one of these ratcheting boxing wrenches. So yeah, we're really cooking along. Yeah, got the ignition coils in. That's simple, right? Slam them down, tighten up the bolts. So we're looking good there. I still need to replace this piece of wire loom there, that covering there. You can see it's kind of all exposed, and this stuff is really brittle. I mean, it's just, look at it, just falling apart, man. It's bad. So I got to get that out of there and replace it. So I've just been fixing up some of the wire covers. Here's one here I did. One over here I did. I did one on the for the alternator, for that top plug. That piece of covering was all frayed and dry rotted out of there, so I got rid of that. Oh, the other thing is the pulley for the power steering pump. So in the kit that we use to pull the pulley off, there's a you'll find one of these bolts in here that'll fit right into the threaded inside of the stem here. Then we're going to take our pulley and put it in place. Pulley now in place. You just kind of want to see if you can start it a little bit on there, just to kind of get it going. Then you remember this guy we used to help pull off the bolt. I'm going to thread this down. Actually, I think I might need to use a shorter one. Yeah, I think this is going to be too long. Let me swap that out. Okay, so there's a shorter stem that comes to the kit as well, and then we can thread this guy in place. We can use this guy, spin this down here. Then we can start to then get ourselves a wrench and start to walk this pulley back down onto the stem. Easy peasy. The tool makes it really easy to do. As I showed you earlier, it's a an inexpensive kit from Harbor Freight that I'm using, but there's plenty of them out there online. So we'll get that in. Once the alternator is all bolted up, there's one more tensioner that will sit right in here. Put that tensioner in there. Make sure you pay attention to the little spot for the tab in the hole there. A little hole for it that it feeds into. Kind of locks it in. So pretty much the front of the motor. Oh yeah, we'll put this guy back in place as well. The reservoir. It's 3 bolts. Yeah, this guy up here. Bolt that on. And I'd say the front of this motor is dressed. So it just leaves us with the top half. We'll put the lower and upper intake in place. I'll show you some of that when I get there. And yeah, we'll be real close to giving this thing a final start up. Alright, let's knock it out. I want to show you something real quick here. This is the power steering pulley once again. And you can kind of see here, you notice that distance there between the shaft and then the front side of the pulley. Let me put a picture up on the screen for you. So you can see how the shaft and the front of the pulley sit flush. So I do not have the pulley fully seated, so I just want to make sure you have that same thing in mind whenever you go to install your pulley. So make sure you seat it all the way. So I'm going to have to get my installer back out and push it down a little bit further. Alright, so now we have the tool back installed on the pulley. I forgot to mention this. These came with the kit. Washer and a little bearing. This bearing allows the tool to continue to spin without working against the post here, the bolt, because without this bearing, what will happen is whenever you're trying to hold this bolt still, you end up screwing it out of the shaft. So this bearing allows you to counteract the force of wanting to unscrew this from the shaft. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, but you have to hold this shaft with a wrench and then crank down on the bolt I'm about to put on there. And without that bearing, you'll keep spinning this back out of the shaft. So make sure you put that bearing in place with that washer. So we're making progress. We have the ECU, the in-car computer, engine computer bracket put in place. Got a bolt here, got a bolt there. There's one around the corner on the end there. It's a 10 millimeter. You'll see it when you get there. Don't forget to put your ground wire back. This guy here is a little tab that goes to this wiring harness. Down here is another one, a little bracket. There's a 10 millimeter that holds that, so don't forget to put those back in place. And this ground wire will go up to this corner after we put the computer back. Power steering pump's all bolted down. I checked all the bolts to make sure everything was snug. I did put this tensioner back on. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook up this bolt on the ECU. Just 4 bolts, no problem. Probably a good time to put the belts on. So let's put that on the screen. This will be the AC and power steering side routing. And this one here is going to be the alternator and water pump routing. So a long list of the might as wells on this job. You might as well put some new belts on the car if you haven't done so in a while. On this vehicle, this is a new tensioner I bought recently. This one's an old one. Probably should have went ahead and just replaced it, but we'll get the car running and then I could easily go back and swap that out at a later date. But yeah, there's tons of might as wells as you go along. This is probably, next to pulling out an engine or transmission or both, I think doing this timing chain job, it's probably one of the toughest jobs that you can do on this car. Yeah, I think you're going to get to know your vehicle very well. Pretty much disassemble a whole lot of it. So you'll get to see a whole lot of this motor and get to know it well. So if I had to do this job over again, it'd probably take me about half the time because I just know where everything's at now. But your first crack at it, it's going to take some time. You're going to, hopefully this video is going to be a big help to you in figuring out what to take off, when to take it off, what the bolts are like, the torque settings, all those kinds of things. So you can move along a lot quicker than I did. Alright, we have the computer all mounted up. I was wrong. The ground wire here that I mentioned earlier goes to a T25, little T25 bolt here. So tighten that down, be careful, make sure you seat your T25 nice and firm in there so you don't strip that bolt out. Make sure you take your time hooking up the connections here. This lever, as you recall, is pulled all the way out and you seat it onto the little knobs there, and then just start to gently press down and push in and it'll lock itself into place. So take your time, get it seated nice. You don't want to bend any of the little connectors in there, so get that knocked out. Got the power steering pump, the power steering reservoir all set up. I mentioned the belts, I gotta put those on. And oh, I forgot, right here we got these 2 openings here for the cooling system. So on the bench, which is a huge mess right now, this guy here, I gotta put this back on. I gotta replace these gaskets. There's a gasket here and there's a gasket there. I went to the dealership. They didn't come with the valve cover kit that I purchased. So this is the guy for this one here, and I'll put the part numbers in the description. And this is the one for the round one here. So I had to go to the dealer. They're about $10 a piece, so 20 bucks later I got these 2 seals knocked out. Let's get that bolted up. Alright, so now we have belts on, and we have this water outlet in. There's 2 bolts, one here, one down there, and there, and she's set right in there. Put the hose back down. I'm not putting any of the clamps on yet until I put the radiator back and get all the hoses oriented, and then I'll clamp them down. So just don't forget, if you pulled your radiator, which I'm going to give you a little message on that, I'm not going to recommend you do it if you're doing this inside of a 3.6 Cadillac CTS or any 3.6 vehicle that is rear-wheel drive with a traditional mount engine. If you have a transverse mount, then it's really not really a question with those applications. But with these, wasn't really necessary to remove the radiator. I did it just to make some extra clearance. Plus, I had a little bit of issues with the crankshaft, which was something out of the ordinary, which you probably won't run into, so I'm not going to get into it. But it just benefited me to pull the radiator out, but it actually created a bigger problem for me, so I will run over that shortly. Time to put on the lower intake manifold. I have it all cleaned up. I went over the underside of this with some that cheap oven cleaner. I really think that the Walmart brand really does a good job of, you know, eating away at the grease or the baked on stuff without really damaging the metal or leaving anything really behind. So it kind of is just a perfect balance for what I'm using it for. I also cleaned up the mating surface here at the motor. Just used a green Scotch-Brite pad and just gave it a good wipe down. So now it's time for a fresh gasket. Here's the old one here. We'll grab a fresh gasket and line this thing up, and then we'll also hook up the fuel line, which is sitting back here. There she goes. So let's get her done. Here go on the fuel rail side, and then the little clip part goes on the fuel line side. So it's just as simple as, let me just get myself in view here and back up some. And it's taking the finger side, you lock it in down here, and then you push down on the other side, and she's all locked in. So make sure you put that back. Be careful not to drop it. If you do, you may have to move I drop mine, is why I'm saying it, but you'll have to pull up the lower intake, fish for it, and then put it back on. So you take your time, but yeah, that fuel line will click in place, and then just put that clip in there to kind of lock it in. All right, we're coming down the finish line, just finishing up our last connections and putting things back together here. Just want to show you a couple areas that you don't want to forget to hook up. Here's one item. I'm on the passenger side, or the right side of the car. Where is it at here? This guy here. Yeah. Then we also have this connection here. I'll put pictures up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. These guys back here. You got your connection here at the throttle body. Let's see, oh, also back here. Also back here, a little connection here. You got two plugs back there to plug in. I'll put pictures up so you see what I'm talking about. We've added oil, new oil filter, and just gonna have to put the air box in, and I had the radiator out. I'm gonna put that radiator in right now. So after that, we can get it ready to fire up. So let's get that going.